You know, one of the advantages of doing these 1-minute reviews is that with current gaming trends, these are now quicker than the average automated cutscene. How's that for some food for thought? Welcome to the 1-minute rundown. I'm Octrinity, your host, and take care of the guy behind me, please. This time we're running down Star Fox. This is Nintendo's set of space shooting games featuring Fox McCloud and his team of mercenary space pilots. While it's mostly known as a corridor shooter where you're constantly flying forward, or a little less frequently old-school aerial combat, you'll occasionally get to some adventure, strategy, or more modern shooting elements. It seems well remembered for a lot of things, among them its meme-worthy dialogue, it's one of the first games to use force feedback, and it's probably the earliest console game you can think of that has polygon-based graphics. The characters certainly have some fans thanks to Smash Brothers and the furry community, but the game fell off the radar a while back. This review covers all 5 games in the series. We're entering the review now. Everybody stay alert! When this game came out, it was a bit of a wave from the future, since it was using 3D graphics way before it was considered cool. But now the game just shows its age and comes off as trying to do too much on a platform too old. I can excuse the plain-looking levels, but the game doesn't seem to maintain a constant engine speed, and the draw distance is just unacceptable. And while the usual cast of characters appears, their appearance is kinda superficial, since they do little more than request easy to provide help or shoot down enemies you could have easily gotten yourself. And while the game is fairly short, finishable within 40 minutes or so, there are 3 distinct paths through it, plus 2 surprisingly well-hidden secret levels. The levels themselves manage to be pretty well designed, though some just feel like they're similar aside from the difficulty, and a few feel like they just threw whatever they could to make things really hard, though to be fair that's not uncommon for this genre. The bosses, on the other hand, manage variety and balance a bit better. In the end, the game has a lot of potential, and certainly gave some good material for sequels, but it only lives up to some of what it could have been. This is another one of the sequels that doesn't go too far out of its comfort zone defined by the last game, but you know what, let's take that back. We do get 2 surprises of note in the form of the Landmaster tank and the Blue Marine sub, but aside from those 2 vehicles, the game seems to instead want to just improve on the foundation. So let's see. First and foremost, the game's running on technology that can support it without any trouble. The multiple path structure is still around, but instead of having fixed paths, these branch off based on what you do in the level. And the extra characters feel like they add more to the experience. Adding to the replay value even further is a goal score for every level, and netting all of these unlocks a harder difficulty level that's, well, actually really hard. We've also got a few levels that are free-flying within a certain range, and while I like the corridor segments more, these are a welcome change too, especially factoring in the fights with the rival team Star Wolf. Yet another ticket to making sure each level provides a different experience. So yes, there's a good reason why when someone mentions Star Fox, this is probably the game you thought of first. Though you will get a few shooting segments in line with the rest of the series, they just serve as a bridge for what's otherwise an adventure game modeled after Legend of Zelda, with more of an emphasis on puzzle solving and exploration than combat, actually a result of this game being planned as a standalone title. And while a lot of Star Fox fans seem to like it, I'm having a very hard time understanding why. It can't be for the combat, it's pretty much broken, mostly just mashing A when there's an opening and becomes hilariously broken once you have the freeze ray. It can't be for the story, which barely gets any deeper than finding a certain number of artifacts and rescuing Crystal, the game's designated captive. It certainly can't be for the pacing, which requires so much pointless backtracking and distractions that the end result is the game feels like it's more than half pointless filler, at least not till the end where they feel like they're rushing just to get to the end. So what's left? Variety? Sure, we cover a lot of different game styles here, but they were only pulled off average at best. And the puzzle solving, well, I can't really think of any cases here that aren't pulled off in other better games. I had high hopes for this one, and pretty much all of them were dashed in the end. I have a feeling I know why the Star Fox fanbase doesn't like this game as much as the others, and that's because only about half the game's played from the R-Wing. There are 10 missions total, even though they're longer than anything else we've seen and have a fixed storyline instead of multiple paths. And of those 10, only 3 of them are the corridor shooter most of us expect. The rest is in a free roaming mode, and most of that is done on foot, third-person shooter style, which usually breaks down to destroying a set number of targets. And by that I mean an older style of third-person shooter, with random power-ups thrown all over the place and the ability to carry all of your weapons at once. But the fact is, it actually pulls this off pretty well, not straying too far from established game mechanics and keeping every level different, and not creating too many of the cheap hits shooting games are known for, but I'll also admit that pulls off flying better. For extra fun, some of these have you switch in and out of the vehicles, making for some of the most interesting levels in this whole series. Overall, the game does a lot more good than bad, and has enough hard yet fair challenge that it still keeps me wanting to try again. This game breaks down into two distinct modes. There's a turn-based strategy phase where you draw out the path that each of your ships will take, and assuming they intersect with an enemy ship, then it'll break down to a combat phase. Combat feels a bit iffy though, in particular because of the game's control scheme, which uses every button on the DS to shoot and the stylus and touchscreen for literally everything else. And while it works better than it sounds, it's not really an improvement over the traditional control scheme, and makes performing a few actions more difficult. Leaving that aside, it feels like you're in much more danger of failing a run from running out of time instead of health, and losing the game from letting something hit the mothership than anything else, skewing the game difficulty in a way that really feels against what they were aiming for. On the plus side, the idea of having every character have different stats is something that really should have been implemented sooner, and the branching storyline is back, though the story is pretty poorly written, especially in terms of keeping the characterization consistent from before. It's not a particularly memorable game, just average at best, but if you see it lying around at a friend's house, it's worth your time to borrow and check out a few levels. And that's the Star Fox series, all 5 games. If we want to be technical, there is a 6th release, a remake of Star Fox 64 on the 3DS, but let's be honest, straight remakes don't really count. There actually was a 6th game planned as a sequel to the SNES game, but in the end it was never actually released. On the other hand, it's looking more likely we'll get our 6th game on the Wii U, as some of Nintendo's designers have stated that's one series they would like to make a comeback. There actually was a rumor going around a few months back that the next Star Fox game would be a crossover with Nintendo's other sci-fi series, Metroid, though it was later dismissed as having never gotten past the concept phase. But if you're looking to get your hands on the older games, these aren't too rare, but keep in mind the original Star Fox is one of very few SNES games that's not on the Virtual Console. Check back in a few weeks for the next episode of 1 Minute Rundown. We'll keep with the future theme and look at what's supposedly going on back at Earth during an age where space travel is probably commonplace. See you then, and remember, never give up. Trust your instincts.
You sure he'll be cool about this? Oh, okay. Oh, we're starting. Oh. Scheduled for release in 1995, Star Fox 2 is the direct sequel to Star Fox. Fans of the series have managed to get their hands on a beta cart, and, though the debugging tools weren't removed, the main game itself is completely intact and playable. Through the magic of emulation, we can now experience this game firsthand, and find it to be vastly different than its predecessor and eventual successor. One can now play as one of up to 6 characters from the Star Fox team, each with different abilities. Rather than a linear path through the game, the player is now free to choose the order of missions. In addition to the standard flight mode, a new all-range mode, ground missions, base infiltrations, and a new vehicle are added. The game is a lot of fun, even if all the missions seem to be either shoot this target down or destroy this base from the inside. It's a pity this game may never see the light of day.
Wait, who are you, and what are you doing at my computer?
Damn it! I thought you said you'd be okay with this.